Okay, so my education reform project is going to be on standards-based education, which has kind of been a growing topic really since about the 80s. So what is standards-based education? A couple questions there are, what are standards, and then what is standards-based education? And really, it's really focused on student learning and the mastery and the progress of their learning towards a target. So in education, the term standards-based refers to the systems of instruction, assessment, and grading of academic reporting that are based on students demonstrating understanding or mastery of the knowledge and skills they are expected to learn as they progress through their education. So why should future teachers care? The main reason is that standards are being seen more and more in the U.S. schools, and they're playing a more important role. Really, that's been seen ever since the act a couple years ago with the No Kid Left Behind. And then standards help inform instruction. They really help narrow down exactly what is going to be taught in each school year and what students can be expected to learn. And then they help meet individual student needs. You're really able to see what students are learning, what they've mastered, and what topics they still might be struggling on. So what are some pros for using standards-based education? One of the pros is that students know the expectations. They know what they're expected to learn by the end of the standard and what exactly that standard all entails, because it's all going to be laid out prior to beginning the lesson. Another pro is the accountability with classroom progress. This is seen as teachers have all of their standards already laid out for them and what they need to teach throughout the year. So this can allow for administration to really hold teachers accountable for accomplishing each of those standards. It also helps the teachers. Not only does it create a fair and objective means of grading, as each grade a 1, a 2, a 3, which is the target goal, or a 4, which is exceeding. It's all going to be laid out what a student has to do to fall into a category 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. So there's really it's really not up to the teacher to decide what they get. It's going to be all kind of laid out based on what the student can do. It also helps the teacher, because consider a school where the teachers know exactly what essential skills and knowledge the students should be learning that year, and what they know that their colleagues are going to also be teaching based on these manageable standards. And then because of this, their fellow teachers can collaborate with each other on lessons and units because they're all going to be hitting the same standards. With the use of these standards in schools, it's kind of created this bank of proven standards reference, instructional materials, lessons, units, and assessments that have all kind of been perfected through research and just being done a bunch of times. So this allows for both new and veteran teachers can use these targeted materials and then learning from and adding to the richness of these materials to really create a really good lesson. And then because of these rich resources, new and struggling teachers are really able to achieve confidence and competence more rapidly. And then these experienced teachers have a sense of making a meaningful ongoing contribution to their craft while engaging these students. So these proven methods of practice and lessons kind of all align with these established standards, and then they become the center of like professional dialogue. Then the results on local, state, and formative assessments are getting better and better because of this standards-based education, and it's becoming inevitably better on short and long-term results on both state and local assessments, as well on norm reference, alternative, and criteria referenced assessments. So we're really seeing the increase on testing because of this form of education. It also allows for grades to be used as a form of communication rather than just sending home a report card with a couple A's, a few B's, maybe a C, and just being like, here are the points that your student or your child accumulated over the semester, and here's the grade that correlates with it. Instead, parents are really able to see the concepts that their student really grasped and maybe struggled to grasp based on whether they got 4s, 3s, 2s, or 1s. And then if they want, they're able to kind of work with their student more at home if they wanted. Otherwise, there would be chances for relearning, reteaching all in the classroom as well. This also helps to repurpose education as a fundamental step towards a career. The critical connections that students are going to make between course material and long-term goals will serve their ability to understand the world around them in a more multidimensional, comprehensive terms. In the world, we're able to take, for example, your driver's license test. You can take that really as many times as you want until you pass, really without any punishment. So why are we asking kids to, here's your test, you have to pass it on the first try. If you don't pass it, you get the grade you get, and it is what it is. With standards-based education, we're really working towards the mastery of the goal instead of just the one time, I hope you know it for this test, and then after that, it doesn't really matter. And then it also provides an alternative to letter grades. There's a fairly comprehensive and growing body of literature indicating the weakness of traditional letter grades. And so this form of grading, which comes from standards-based education, really goes and provides that alternative to letter grades, which could possibly be a little bit stronger. Here's a quote from somebody that just kind of put into perception kind of what his thoughts were on standards-based education and kind of how silly it is that we're putting so many high stakes and really what we're preparing our kids for. So I'll give you a chance to read that quick. Okay, so now moving on to some cons for using standards-based education. The biggest one probably right now is that you're really having to change the norm. We've used traditional letter grades for really as long as people can remember, where you get assigned an A, a B, a C, or a D, really just based on how much work you get and how many points you accumulate. So one of the biggest things is that you have to change the way people view grades and really just redesign everything. It takes a lot of work to lay out these standards and what it means to accomplish, get a 1, get a 2, get a 3, or get a 4 for each standard, and that just takes a lot of work. Another part of that is that standards-based education is very time-consuming because it calls for reassessing and reteaching, both of which the teacher has to do, and both of those do take time out of the traditional classroom setting that a lot of us think of. Reteaching takes a lot of time, and so does offering times for reassessment. One of the biggest ones is that parents are seeing what they think is a lack of responsibility because standards-based education gives students many chances to improve. A lot of students don't give their best in their first attempt, knowing that they're going to get a second or third attempt to really see improvement, so they might not give their best attempt on the first try. Another thing that people say is a con to standards-based education is how it limits education, because standards-based education, they feel, removes the incentive for teaching anything that is not going to be graded. So if it's not a standard that's going to be graded, the teacher's just not going to teach it. So therefore, teachers are getting stuck teaching standards that they maybe aren't as passionate about, aren't as good at teaching, and therefore the content is less engaging for students, and the students just aren't learning it as well because the teachers are feeling limited to the things that they can teach. So what is our Christian response to this? And because of the emphasis on meeting the individual needs of the unique image bearers that we teach, and the growth over time. If Christian educators are convinced that the learners in their classroom are unique in their strengths and their weaknesses and gifts and talents, then we need to teach them, assess them that way. So this is kind of where that standards-based education and assessment comes into, where we are able to understand where our students both struggle and are succeeding, and to what degree. So using this system, it's easier to give specific feedback to students regarding what they have mastered and what they still need more attention to, giving them specific feedback and specific encouragement. And then when a student finally does master a concept that he or she may have been really struggling on, as a teacher, you're really able to celebrate that once that proficiency has been attained. And then kind of implementing this new type of assessment just allows you to kind of practice what you're hopefully preaching regarding to who your students are as these unique image bearers of Christ, and just how we can kind of equip them to become disciples of Christ, and then equipping them for life outside of school. And then it also provides a clear and concise, valuable education for our students that will hopefully equip them to better serve the kingdom of God.